Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 2, Episode 9, Home Again. Now, this episode was very interesting because it starts off where it's like, of course, everybody's, sad because we at least temporarily lost Pablo. I mean, the whole point of this episode was to get Pablo back. And then, instead of it going somewhere normal where it was like, okay, this is going to go into some demonic magic, things like that, try to get Pablo back, they flat out jump through time. Like, I was like, that is not what I thought that spell was going to do. They shoot through time. Because when it's like, oh, fix it, I'm like, he can't really mean, like, time travel, right? Like, when Ash is seeing Pablo, I'm like, this can't really be what he means. And that's it. It's jump through time. They go through time. They're back in the 80s. Ash turns that guy into a drunk, the bum that almost got hit by the car. That's the guy that he gave the alcohol to, so ruined his life. And I'm curious if they're gonna do anything else, because we're going into the season finale, which is really awesome, but at the same time that really sucks. I hate that this show has such short seasons, but they're going into it, and once again, and I kind of love it. I don't know if they'll be able to do this every season, but I was like, that's kind of awesome that they somehow managed to find a way, just like in season 1, to get them back to the cabin for the last 2 episodes. I'm like, that's actually pretty freaking sweet. It's like they find a way to make it new each time. And this, I think I liked even more than the first time, because the first time it was like, alright, it's nighttime and stuff. For the most part, they were in the cabin, outside of like Pablo and Kelly traveling around with the hikers and stuff. But it was kind of just like they're doing their own thing, and for the most part it was normal until Ash kind of failed in his little mission, and then he got cloned and all that stuff, and then it kind of expanded a little. But this was just like all over the place, because it was like we have, as soon as they get to the cabin, they get chased. It's like, this isn't supposed to be happening, but of course it is. So then they split up. So Ash, of course, once again, he's in the cabin by himself, and then we have Ruby and Kelly going off on their own, and they're trying to find him and the cabin. So he's doing his mission once again inside the cabin, not exactly going too well. He fails at it once again, and so he goes and he finds this woman in the basement, and it's the wife, Henrietta, of the original guy from the movie who actually had the book, the doctor or scientist, I guess. So he's freaking out. He's like, crap, I thought the book was supposed to be here. They went back, really, really far. So it was way before they, went to the camp and stuff, or actually went to the cabin. So finds Henrietta. She's in the basement, and I love the way they did it. Where at first, it also was funny, but at first he's freaking out and he's like, I'm not gonna trust you, and he's slapping her and stuff, and he's like, I don't believe you or anything like that. And then of course things get crazy because the scientist comes in. He brings in basically Daphne. So she's like, thanks for the extra credit and stuff. And then she steps on a bear trap, and I'm like, crap, this dude's lost it. He's the one possessed, and the wife is right. I was just like Ash. I was like, oh, he's nuts. So of course Ash ends up believing the wife, lets her free, and then the second he does that, the husband's like, that's why when it possessed my wife, I had to figure something out. He's like, oh man. And so it's like, he did all this stuff, and it's very interesting because of course the guy was still kind of an a-hole, because it's like his plan was still to take the demon out of his wife and put it into this innocent young girl, and it's like, it's still kind of an a-hole move. Like, I know it sucks to lose your wife, but that was a dick move to just throw a demon into somebody else and say, sorry, you're screwed now. So that leads to a ton of insanity. The doctor gets knocked out by his possessed wife. Ash has to fight the possessed wife as he's trying to help the girl. I also thought, I was really surprised by this, she got out of that fairly scot-free, because I thought her leg was just going to literally rip clean off, because he's pulling this bear trap with one hand, by the way, which doesn't make any sense. I was thinking, like, she really needs to help him. Like, she's screaming like crazy, and he's trying to help her. And I'm like, you can't open a bear trap with one hand going in one direction. It's just going to pull the whole bear trap to the side. And I'm like, if she was, like he said, like, screaming isn't going to help, if she realized, just open the bear trap and like help him use your hands on one side and just lift your foot clean out, they would have been done way faster. But she was freaking out so much, and he's just pulling it with one hand. I'm like, this is not going to go anywhere. So of course that goes wrong, and then he's being pulled through the air, and he's pulling on, his hand is stuck inside the bear trap along with her leg. And that's when I thought, like, her leg is just going to rip clean off, because he's floating in midair. She is too, because the thing's on a chain, so she's holding on to the post while he's holding on to her leg on this bear trap, or he's trapped in the bear trap with her leg, and he's just being yanked in the air by this demon, and eventually it like slides off, and I was like, wow, she made it out of that without losing her entire leg, which really surprised me. So they end up trapped down there because, of course, Doc wakes up. He locks him in the basement and is like, well, now we're stuck with her. So Ash has to go through, and he's probably going to have to try to kill her again in the past, which comes after another really great scene when he first gets in the cabin. Very awesome reference to Army of Darkness, which I loved, which for those of you, if you're watching this, most likely you've seen it, but just in case you haven't, there's a scene in Army of Darkness where Ash has little versions of himself attack him. So they trip him, they like make him fall on the stove and stuff like that. And eventually one like jumps down his throat. And so he's like, what the F am I gonna do? Like there's a little Ash inside of me now. So he puts the water on the kettle, and just like in this episode, they added to it a little bit because he did like the cinnamon first, and then he just had a bunch of hot sauce, which I thought was funny because he pauses and then he has like that freak out scream because he couldn't handle it. And then they do exactly what he did in the movie, where he actually grabs the kettle and he pours the boiling water down his throat. In this way, it was a lot funnier than it was in the movie, because in that he actually did it, and he like had the actual water go down his throat. And in this, he was freaking out so much, he just like and he like poured boiling water on his face. So it was even funnier than it was in the movie, which that scene always stuck to me because I'm like, how can you possibly drink boiling water? And movie magic, it blew my mind as a kid. I was like, how can he? It's boiling water. You can't drink that. Although I guess it wasn't really boiling, but it was whistling in this one especially. And they just made it funnier, but that was just how it was in the movie, where, you know, one of the little ashes ended up inside of his body, and that's how he killed it. Like, he melted it, basically, with boiling water down his throat. So, I was like, that's an awesome reference. They did that. They almost went with him losing his leg in this one. Like, basically, he steps on a nail, infects the whole thing, and it was almost like he had to chop his leg off and stuff. And I was like, I'm sure they aren't going to go with that. And of course they don't. He's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And somehow it worked. I mean, all he had to do was pour some hot water down his throat. But him sucking out basically deadite ectoplasm from his leg like a snake bite, I'm like, I just didn't think that was a good idea. And it didn't end up as bad as I thought, because it ended up being simpler. But I was like, I thought he was going to like turn into a deadite again, which probably would have been another cool reference of the old movies as well. But it was really cool seeing everything he went through in the cabin. Another reference, I personally assume it was a reference, but the tree scene, of course, with Ruby and Kelly attacking them, that was really awesome. For those of you who've seen Evil Dead, I think it's only in the first one. I don't think they do that in the second movie. But in the first movie, as well as the remake of Evil Dead, they have the tree rape scene. So they kind of reference that a little bit. It doesn't get as crazy, and the tree was just trying to eat them this time. But that's what I thought of, because I'm like, those are like two crazy scenes from those movies. And it was really awesome. Like, they're fighting this thing, and it's almost like a living octopus. Like, it rises up and it has an actual mouth. I loved what they did for just the mechanics of that. I was like, this looks amazing. And, you know, it's got like tentacles and stuff all around it, and it's whipping all around. They're flipping through the air and stuff. And fortunately, Kelly's able to, like, you know, break off a branch and give it to Ruby, and she just pokes the eye and it just explodes in black. Like, instantly, it's just like boom, and it you know, just blows up. And fortunately, they're safe from that. And going into this season finale, I'm super excited. And based on the promo, not only do we have Back in Time Ball, we also have Back in Time Ruby. So they're dealing with Ball again in the season finale. And we have basically evil Ruby. So I'm curious how they're going to play around with that, because they don't seem, you know, at least in the promo, they didn't show current Ruby and old Ruby. It just seemed like it was old Ruby with, you know, the blonde hair. And she seemed like she was just the villain like she was in the first season. So I'm actually excited to see how this plays out. Like, how are they going to defeat Ball without, you know, Pablo? But they technically do have the Necronomicon, but they also have evil Ruby, who may or may not be under Ball's control, because that was kind of the whole thing with Ball. Like, he can manipulate you and force you to be under his control, So maybe she was during that specific time frame, and that's what we'll get to see. So they have to deal with old Ruby as well as Ball, and maybe, excuse me, present day Ruby is going to have to like break her former self out of this hold that Ball has, so that they all can work together to kill Ball a second time. And then maybe if they do that, like, because the whole plan was for Ash, he was like, well, if I never read the book, Pablo is alive. But if they kill Ball, they could still go through the same process of Ruby being the solitary villain for the first season, and Ash in general just screwing up, because it wasn't her being the villain that started everything, it was him being drunk and high and reading from the book. So if they kill Ball in the past, it could still have the first season make sense. Maybe, ultimately it's a TV show, so it's gonna still, it's not everything can change 100%, but it'll change enough to the point where they kill Ball in the past, he can't kill Pablo in the present. So I'm excited to see how they play around with that. That might also be the cure for Pablo, where if Ruby is able to convince herself, like, hey, just help this guy out from the beginning, just tell him this plan from the very beginning, and maybe, they won't have to deal with it, because she didn't run into them until like halfway through the first season anyway, so they still go through killing off a couple of Deadites, having to deal with Kelly's parents and stuff like that, so they'd still have that team up in the beginning of the series, and then when they finally get to finding Ruby, it's just like, hey, just as soon as you find them, tell them this plan, because she'd still have to like search for them and everything, because I don't know, Ash probably wouldn't remember exactly, so who knows. But either way, super excited for this finale. Hopefully it ends with Pablo coming back. I mean, they changed the past, save Pablo, go into something else crazy for season 3. So I'm hoping it's, I know it's going to be awesome, but I'm hoping it's a happy, awesome ending and we get to see Pablo come back. But definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and of course, I want to know what you guys are expecting to see from the season finale, what you want to see from the season finale, how do you think this is going to affect season 3, like how deep are they going to go with time travel actually changing all of time, So I want to know your theories on that, like how far they're going to go with it, how much they're truly going to change. And like I said, just want to know what you guys are expecting and hoping to see in general. And I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.